Every man remembers at least one night when the air seemed heavy with electricity, when the look in her eyes felt like a secret language spoken only for him, when he mistook the sudden rush of heat for proof that she had chosen him forever. Because in that moment, he wanted the intensity to mean more than it actually did. He wanted to believe that lust was a sign of destiny, not just a surge of appetite. This is where blindness begins, in the place where you confuse the intensity of desire with the weight of truth. Nietzsche warned us that it is not reason that rules perception, but drives. Our instincts, our hungers, our cravings, these are not background noise. They shape the very way reality appears to us. Lust is one of the strongest among them, and it does not whisper. It seizes, it narrows, it turns the world into a tunnel where only one figure matters. In her case, lust reshapes her judgment. In yours, it clouds your reading of her actions. Together, you are drawn into a theater where the lines are not truth, but projection. Think of it in practical terms. A woman caught in lust may overlook red flags she would never tolerate in colder light. She will defend choices that clash with her stated values. She will imagine potential that does not exist. To the outside world, it looks irrational. To her, in the moment, it feels like clarity. But Nietzsche would remind us, what feels like clarity in intoxication is often the deepest form of blindness. And the danger is not only hers. When you encounter her in this state, you risk mistaking her intensity for depth, her attention for loyalty, her desire for permanence. This is why Nietzsche called intoxication both creative and destructive. It has the power to break rules, to dissolve barriers, to inspire courage. But it also has the power to distort reality until the world no longer resembles itself. When lust takes over, she does not see you as you are. She sees what the drive demands. And you, if you are not careful, will see her response as evidence of something more stable than it really is. The first warning, then, is simple. Never build your judgment on moments of passion. Passion is real, but it is not permanent. It burns, it blinds, and then it fades. What matters is not how she sees you in the height of desire, but how she treats you when the fire cools. Nietzsche's hidden lesson here is brutal, but freeing. Lust is not a compass. It is a storm. And if you trust it to guide you, you will end up lost. There are moments when you think you are weighing facts with calm judgment. But if you look closely, you see that you were already leaning toward the conclusion your hunger wanted you to reach. Because Nietzsche tells us that our instincts do not simply push us, they decide in advance what we will even recognize as truth. His point is ruthless. Perception is not neutral. It is filtered through drives. And among those drives, lust is one of the most deceptive. When desire ignites, it does not simply add intensity to your view of reality. It rewrites reality itself. A smile becomes a promise. A glance feels like destiny. A night of closeness is mistaken for a declaration of permanence. Nietzsche warned against the illusion that we are rational beings first. He argued that our reasoning often arrives late, called in to justify what the drives have already chosen. You see her interest, but it is your longing that labels it as loyalty. You see her warmth, but it is your craving that insists it must be love. Consider how this plays out in her. Lust narrows her field of judgment. A man she might never admire in her ordinary state can seem magnetic under the pull of passion. She will make excuses for his flaws. She will project virtues that are not there. In these moments, she is not lying to you. She is blinded by the very drive that feels like insight. Nietzsche would say, she is not seeing you at all. She is seeing through the lens of her own intoxication. And when you meet her in that condition, your own blindness often doubles the illusion. You do not ask if her behavior is consistent over time. You do not test whether her words hold weight outside of desire. You accept the intensity as evidence. You surrender to the story your drive wants to hear. Nietzsche's warning here is not about her alone, but about the trap you set for yourself. The truth is uncomfortable. Lust does not create reality. It distorts it. It narrows options. It erases doubt. It crowns appetite as wisdom. To resist that distortion requires a man to step outside the moment and ask what stands when the drive subsides. The lesson is not cynicism, but clarity. Desire is part of life, but if you treat it as truth, you will build your choices on sand. Nietzsche's insight is clear. What we call judgment is often only the voice of our drives dressed in reason's clothing. There are nights when the boundaries of judgment dissolve, when laughter comes too easily, when bodies lean closer without hesitation, when the ordinary voice of caution is drowned in a chorus of heat. And in those nights, what seems like freedom is often only the intoxication Nietzsche called Dionysian, a state where the individual is swept away by forces greater than reason. Nietzsche described the Dionysian as both dangerous and creative. It is the power that dissolves walls, that erases restraint, that allows new beginnings to emerge. It is why festivals, music, and passion feel like liberation. But this same energy blinds. Under its pull, the woman who is usually measured becomes reckless. The man who is usually cautious forgets the lessons of experience. Lust is not only appetite, it is intoxication. And intoxication changes the way reality appears. Think of her in this state. She looks at a man and sees not his character, but his ability to feed the drive of the moment. She believes she has discovered the truth, when in fact, she has only surrendered to appetite. She may speak words of permanence, but they are born of heat, not of steady reflection. In Nietzsche's language, she is in the grip of Dionysian force, and in that force, blindness is not weakness. It is the nature of intoxication itself. Men who mistake this blindness for devotion are setting themselves up for collapse. You may believe her words are eternal when they are only temporary. You may trust her promises as vows when they are only echoes of heat. Nietzsche's warning is hidden in plain sight. Do not confuse the clarity of intoxication with truth. When you place your faith in moments born of lust, you are gambling against reality itself. But Nietzsche also saw that the Dionysian had a role. Without it, there is no creation, no boldness, no risk. The problem is not its existence, but our failure to recognize it for what it is. The Apollonian, the sober, measured principle must stand beside it. Where Dionysian passion floods the senses, Apollonian form must test and give shape. The lesson for men is simple. Welcome passion, but never mistake it for permanence. So when she is blinded by desire, remember that it is not malice, but intoxication. Do not anchor your choices to the storm. Look instead at what remains when the tide recedes. Nietzsche's hidden wisdom is that lust will always blind, but a man who sees beyond it can turn blindness into clarity and chaos into strength. There is a trap every man falls into when the fire of desire burns bright, because in those moments, he wants the story to be true more than he wants the evidence to be real. And so he builds his hope on a myth. The myth that passion reveals character, that heat uncovers depth, that lust is a mirror of love. Nietzsche warned us that myths of this kind are not harmless illusions. They are prisons built by our own craving for certainty. The myth says, if she desires me, then she must value me. If she gives herself to me, then she must be loyal to me. If her words are filled with intensity, then they must hold weight beyond the night. But this is only the trick of intoxication. Nietzsche's insight cuts through it. Drives reshape truth, and lust does not reveal permanence, it hides it. A man who treats the myth as reality is not only deceived by her blindness, but also by his own. The way out is a pattern. Myths live in moments, but patterns live in time. Nietzsche would argue that truth is not in sudden flashes of feeling, but in the repeated actions that survive desire's ebb and flow. Does she show respect when desire cools? Does she remain consistent when attention fades? Does she hold the same posture when no one is watching? These questions pierce through myth because they test reality beyond intoxication. Consider a man who meets a woman in the fever of attraction. She speaks of a future, of loyalty, of depth. He believes her words because he wants them to be true. Months later, when the fire cools, her actions no longer match her promises. He feels betrayed, but the betrayal was seated in his refusal to test patterns. Nietzsche would say, he trusted an appearance rather than a will. This is the hidden warning. If you build on myth, you collapse with myth. Passion makes her blind, and if you accept her blindness as vision, you will share her fate. But if you test for patterns, you strip away illusion. You see not what lust wants you to see, but what reality insists upon. Patterns are the shield against blindness, the Apollonian form that steadies Dionysian chaos. So reject the myth that lust equals truth. Look instead for what repeats. Look for consistency, cost, and endurance. Nietzsche's lesson is sharp. The man who replaces myth with pattern gains freedom. He does not resent blindness when it comes because he no longer depends on it. He walks with clarity where others stumble in fire. There comes a moment when a man realizes that the greatest danger is not her blindness, but his willingness to hand over his sight, because it is easier to float in the tide of passion than to stand firm against it. And yet Nietzsche insists that strength is not surrender, it is selection. It is the power to say no when the drive commands yes. Lust tempts men to chase. It whispers that if she is blind with desire, you must secure her before the spell breaks. But this is a trap. Nietzsche's will to power is not about clinging. It is about creating, choosing, setting direction. When you make her lust the measure of your worth, you hand over your agency to a fleeting state. You become a servant to a drive rather than a master of your own standard. Agency begins with distance. When she shows heat, test how she behaves in cold light. When she makes promises in passion, Watch if they hold when passion fades. Do not chase her blindness. Because blindness is not proof, it is distortion. Nietzsche would tell you that the man who lives by standards creates his own law, while the man who lives by her lust is bound by appetite. Think of the men who anchor their identity in a woman's desire. They rise when she burns, they collapse when she cools. Their worth swings on forces outside their control. Nietzsche saw this as weakness, not because desire is evil, but because dependence is slavery. The man who builds himself on shifting ground is doomed to fall. But the man who stands on standards is untouchable. He does not ask whether her lust crowns him with value. He asks whether her actions match the weight of his own path. This is why willpower matters. It is not about domination over her. It is about mastery over yourself. It is the refusal to be carried by blind forces. It is the strength to select only what endures. When you practice this, her blindness no longer dictates your choices. You do not resent it, and you do not worship it. You observe, you test, and you decide. Nietzsche's hidden warning to men is that lust blinds, but it blinds most of all the man who refuses to choose. If you do not set standards, you will live by hers, and hers will be written by appetite, not permanence. Male agency is not about escape from passion. It is about holding frame within it. Strength is not in chasing her fire, but in walking steadily until the fire proves itself real or fades into smoke. There is a silence that follows the fading of passion. A silence where the promises spoken in fire no longer echo. Where the look that once felt eternal is replaced by indifference. And in that silence, a man either learns or breaks. Because Nietzsche's hidden warning was never about avoiding desire, but about refusing to mistake its blindness for truth. Lust will always blind. It blinds her in ways she cannot see, making her defend choices that contradict her values, making her imagine a depth that does not exist. It blinds you in ways you refuse to admit, making you confuse her passion for loyalty, making you accept her intoxication as love. Nietzsche's point is not that lust should be feared, but that it should be understood. Drives do not reveal reality. They bend it, they reshape it, they mask it. The question is not whether she will be blinded by lust, because she will. The question is whether you will allow her blindness to become your compass. Too many men fall into this trap. They elevate moments of heat into proof of permanence. They mistake flashes of desire for the foundation of devotion. And when reality reasserts itself, they feel betrayed, though it was their own blindness that set the stage for collapse. Nietzsche warns you, to live by the intoxication of another is to live without ground. But there is freedom hidden in this warning. If you know that lust blinds, then you no longer demand clarity from it. You no longer demand permanence from passion. You no longer demand proof of love from appetite. Instead, you learn to test, to measure, to observe. You see whether her actions remain steady when heat fades, whether her loyalty holds when fire cools, whether her choices survive beyond intoxication. This clarity does not make you colder, it makes you stronger. You can still enjoy passion without being enslaved by it. You can still welcome desire without confusing it for destiny. Nietzsche's philosophy here is not against love, but against illusion. He calls you to live with open eyes, to see drives for what they are, not for what you wish them to be. So remember the hidden warning: lust blinds her, but the greater danger is that it blinds you. If you refuse to see this, you will live by myth and collapse with myth. But if you see clearly, you free yourself from resentment, from dependence, from illusion. You become the man who does not mistake storms for stars, who walks steady while others stumble. And in that steadiness, Nietzsche would say, lies true strength. If this journey through Nietzsche's warning gave you clarity, then carry it with you and let it shape how you move. And if you want to walk further down these roads with me, you know how. Subscribe, share, and bring others who are ready to hear what most refuse to say. Strength grows when it is spoken, and the conversation does not end here.